and emotionally find that connection in some way. And it's really developed beautifully where I've been able to spend time with friends and family and share and learn together. And that's the idea of teaching, of learning, of creating something new again with that perspective. And it has been a very difficult week. A week ago, last Monday, is when George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis by the police officers there. And there's been a lot of reflection, not enough of that. And I have been at a loss personally, not sure what to do. And I reached out to my friend. I called a number of friends this week and said, look, I'm not sure what to do, except for to say, I'm here, I stand with you, I'm concerned, and I'm going to follow your lead because as a white man, I can speak what I think is truth, but I'm still learning that as well. And I don't know these feelings necessarily, though I can be understanding and empathetic to that reality. And I'm blessed that I have a great friend in Pastor Ken Flowers of Greater New Mount Moriah Baptist Missionary Church I think I'm switched Missionary Baptist Church in Detroit. And I think our relationship goes back 24 years, our friendship. And he did admit to me when we were talking, only for me would he wake up on Monday morning at 9 a.m. after his busy Sunday. And he invited us to be with him yesterday to make a statement on his pulpit. And Rabbi Daniel Schwartz was there representing, I think, really not just Shir Shalom, but the Jewish community and speaking how our feelings and the need to be together. And I was really proud to see that. And Pastor said, sure, he'd come and teach with me and share with me and be a part of this morning. And so I introduce you, my Shir Shalom friends, to my friend, Pastor Ken Flowers.
Good morning, Boker Tov. So good morning to all of you. Rabbi Mike and I go way, way back. We've been friends through the years. And he is a great man, he and his wife. And I'm elated to hear of his twins being freshmen now in college and an older daughter, a senior. How time flies. But it is a blessing to know you and to know your family. And I just want to thank you for your sincere spirit and for inviting me to come on. And he is right. Mondays are my day to rest. I sleep in on Monday. So I said, only for you, my friend, I'm going to get up early. So I thank and praise God that I can do it in the comfort of my home. And I praise God for that. So, Mike, I love you with all my heart, and I thank and praise God for you.
Thank you. Well, it is, the idea of doing things from our home, this whole new reality, like our commute is a little easier these days, right? And I will also thank God for your health, because my friend is also have a new thing on his resume as a survivor of the coronavirus. He did get sick. His illness wasn't as severe as his wife's. His mom, both his mother and his wife were hospitalized, but they're both fine and recovered now, thank God. And so I feel even more of a blessing. You've had a lot of those health challenges, those hurdles, as you said, a survivor you've overcome, because I think you obviously have a message to get out there. And I think you are such a powerful deliverer of that message and such a great leader. For those who don't know, Pastor, he is one of the great ministers in Detroit and has a wonderful following, and people really revere him, and his leadership is we've sat together in the Interfaith Religious Leaders Council with the Archbishop Vigneron, other religious leaders, Imam Kazwini, and really hashed out some wrestled with some tough issues as well, and have been able to really be honest with each other. So I ask you, Pastor, if you could share your perspective, your feelings right now in what's going on in our country and our world.
I think while the coronavirus is going on, it's been going on the last few months, COVID-19, the coronavirus pandemic, there's a deeper virus, the virus of racism, that's been going on for 400 years in this country. 400 years ago, Africans were brought from the motherland, from Africa to America, and we were brought here in chains. And being in America has never fully gotten to the point of understanding that racism is alive and well. That mere act of bringing us to America from our homeland of Africa, not as immigrants, but as slaves, and then to build into the Constitution that we are 3/5 of a person. It is a system of racism and oppression that's been going on for 40 years. And many people say, well, it's over. Slavery is over. We don't need to talk about that. We went through slavery, Jim Crow laws, discrimination, the civil rights movement, and there's still discrimination. So now what we're having, this whole issue of police brutality, the killing of the murder, the senseless murder of George Floyd, it is just, it's like explosion. The lid has blown off the keg. And what is happening is that outrage is all across the country because what happened to George Floyd happens to many of us on a daily basis in terms of police brutality. The difference is someone caught it on videotape and we can now see it for ourselves. So racism is alive and well. It has to stop, and we have to work together, Blacks and Jews, other groups of faith, to make sure that we can put an end to this.
Mm-hmm. You know, I've seen so many people posting and in my community and feeling the outrage. And I feel like, unfortunately, we've been here before. And we get angry and we post something, you know, whether it's Freddie Gray or Michael Brown or Arbery, you know, and our awareness is there. And then something else happens and we pivot and just are distracted. And it's because we're the beneficiaries of privilege, of white privilege. I am. I candidly admit that, you know, and understand that. And so I have to be able to utilize what I've been given to help others. That's what I believe, right? You know, like I know that you and I walk into a store and we're looked at differently. Right. It took me a long time to recognize that. Right. And Jews sometimes think, well, you know, we have faced years of centuries, thousands of years of anti-Semitism. And that is legitimate. That is true. And that is horrendous. But we still can blend in. Right.
Yeah.
So I told you a story before about when I was in Tanzania and literally being the only white person in certain areas at certain times. Always feeling safe, though, ironic, you know, that people were the kindest but still I was different and people noticed me, and it sort of flipped it on its head for me to make me aware of that and to appreciate what friends have told me before. Like, you don't get it. You know, you don't see people watching you when you walk into a store. So.
Yeah. Well, you know, the thing is, Mike, is that many people, and I share this all the time, racism, white privilege. You mentioned white privilege, and I share this with my Jewish friends and any other non-Jewish friends that's white. Is that you said a key thing? You can blend in, whether you're Jewish, whether you're white Anglo-Saxon Protestant, whether you're Catholic, whatever. If your skin color is white, you can easily blend in. And the problem is that many people don't realize that white privilege occurs. I'll never forget an incident that happened when I was in seminary at Colgate Rochester Divinity School Seminary. There was a professor, the professor of preaching, I might add. This is a white guy going to tell me how to preach. But I took the class and I listened, but he put me in a category of a B+, that I would never get anything higher than. So I wrote a paper. I knew the paper was great. I knew it was a good. He gave me a B+. And I was like, what do you mean a B+? And he said, well, your conclusion did not follow. But when I showed him how I did, he's like, oh, now I see. I said, so you're going to change the grade? He said, no, I'm not going to change the grade. I said, why? And then he tells me, he said, grades are not, that's what's important. I said, for you, you can say that. For me, as a black man in America, I said, if I flunk out, if I get bad grades or whatever, then it would affect my entire life. He never changed my grade. And so the last paper, the final paper, it was a team approach, white professor and a black professor, team teaching. They would rotate teaching, grading papers. When it came to the final exam, the black professor was supposed to grade my paper. All the papers that I did for her, I got A's. All the ones I did for him, I got a B+. When it came to the very last paper, she was to grade it, but she was out of town. He took my paper and graded it. And I knew it was an A paper because she told me to take all the things from her A papers and put in it. He gave me a B+. I went back to him. We talked. I was outraged. I was livid because I said, this is what's happening in terms of me being Black. You may say that it doesn't matter. It does matter. I said, I would never take another class from you as long as I live, but I saw how racist that was. It was a minor thing for him, but major for me. Even the president of Colgate Rochester, he and I got into it because he called me a troublemaker. And when he said that to me, I told him, I said, you don't realize being Black in America, when a white person calls a Black person a troublemaker, it has connotations. I said, so I demand an apology. He said, I was just joking. I was just joking. I said, but you said that in the midst of other white folk. I demand an apology. I was in my 20s in seminary. He finally apologized to me and then said, I'm just surprised you can't take a joke. I said, I'm surprised you called me a troublemaker in front of all of these people. So people he didn't realize, I guess, how offended I was being Black and the connotations that, oh, this is the angry Black man. No, I'm standing for truth, justice, and righteousness. I'm not an angry Black man. I'm a man that stands for justice and righteousness and peace.
Yeah. So that it's important to yeah.
I didn't mean to go there.
No, well, but I think the idea of privilege is important especially for my community to recognize, because I think we sometimes say, "Oh, come on, what's the big deal?" Right? But the reality is that there are certain benefits we get. There's no doubt about it, and I know that part of my success has been it's been handed to me easier. Right. And I don't ever take that for granted. But at the same time, I don't want to forget that not everyone has that. And so what's our responsibility? What is that? And whether it's, all the things in our world, but again, whether it's ableism, whether, the idea of all the benefits that each of us may have, we have to recognize that not everyone has that too. Even the idea of that, the fact that you and me, we have food on our tables and not everyone does. And so what are we making sure, and why do we have that food? Of course. So when I first left that message for you, I said to you, I'm angry and I'm disheartened and I'm distraught. I'm not sure what to do. That anger has flamed up in our country, in our own city of Detroit. I was just in Greensboro. I saw it there too. Obviously, New York, LA, Minneapolis, buildings on fire. Your response to that, because I heard you say it yesterday morning as well, and we talked about that we want nonviolence. We don't want, but is it justified in any way, or are we?
The anger is justified, but the looting is not justified. Dr. King talked about the riots being the voice of the unheard. And what is it that America and our communities don't hear? They don't hear the fact that there's two Americas, white America and Black America. They don't hear that there's injustice when it comes to police brutality in terms of Black men and white men. They don't hear the economic disparities in terms of African Americans being 3/5 of a person, even still today economically. They don't hear these issues of injustice and oppression that plague us. So when people are not heard, then they start rioting, they start doing things to get the attention of the oppressor. I have always stood for nonviolence. I support what Dr. King, anyone that knows me know that I come up in the King tradition as an apostle of nonviolence. I believe in nonviolence, but I also believe that we must protest and let the country know that we're tired. We are tired of the oppression. We're tired of police brutality. We're tired of racism. We're tired of economic injustice. We're tired of these issues. And we're tired even of the man in the White House right now that continues to stoke the fears. His tweets, his comments, they continue to fan into flame. A wink and a nod here. She could talk about Charlottesville and say there are very fine people on both sides when you have bad chaos. And yet what's happening now, he can talk about Antifa, or he could talk about thugs, and yet he has never really addressed the issue of the unrest or addressed the issue of the injustices in this society. And so what we have to do when you have a president, and I don't even call him president, I know I'm going off, but my thing, when you have someone like Donald Trump in the White House who appoints someone like William Barr as Justice Department, as African Americans, we have no faith in the justice system under Trump nor under William Barr. We just don't. Why? It's not a matter of Republican, Democrat. It has nothing to do with political party. It has everything to do with the conduct of Donald Trump, the racist conduct, the racist tweets, the race baiting. It has everything to do with that. And that's why, from my perspective, I call on my folk to vote and vote him out of office. Same with Mitch McConnell. Same, and I tell folks, I got a lot of friends, Republicans, and it has nothing to do with Republicans and Democrats. It has to do with racism in America and race baiting and fanning into flames, as opposed to being a president who can calm the nation, who can be a uniter in chief, who can bring about people together rather than tweeting here, tweeting there. He's not even addressed this. Most presidents, Republican or Democrat, if they had morals and values, would have had an address to the nation by now and would have called for peace and calm, would have called for justice, would have called for a thorough investigation as to what's happening in Minneapolis and across. They would have called, Republican or Democrat, would have called the nation together to have a national discussion. This president has not done that for coronavirus, nor for the virus of racism. And so I'm troubled by that.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you very loudly and clearly on that too. So we're a little bit over, but the reality is that Ken and I could talk forever, and you all get to be a part of that for this moment. I always say it's going to be 15 minutes, but you know, a rabbi's 15 minutes often goes a little longer. Pastor's 15 minutes, how much the more so. But so we won't be much longer. But I'll ask, and so the idea of getting people out to vote, yes, definitely something we need to be working on, that I'm committing to as well. I ask you now, what else can we be doing? Can I share with my congregation, our community, can we be doing besides the showing of solidarity and the importance of seeking justice in these times? But what else?
I think we have to have conversations and come together and dialogue. It's unfortunate with the coronavirus that we cannot have mass meetings together to actually sit in dialogue, but we can still do the Zoom meetings. We can still meet maybe with a smaller group, socially distanced apart from each other. But I think we need to have conversations with each other to talk candidly about African-American oppression, Jewish oppression, racism, anti-Semitism, white privilege, injustice against Blacks. Have that candid conversation and then figure out what can we do in terms of partnering together. What can we do to create economic programs, economic jobs for our communities? What can we do to have quality education for African Americans in urban areas? What can we do to retrain police officers in terms of community policing so that they will learn how to police the community without it being so racist or so violent towards one group of persons versus another group? Because the police department, if you look at the history, police departments were established mainly to keep slaves or Black folk in order. That's what they were established for. So there has to be a rethinking and a re-understanding of police departments around and justice. Black folk can go to prison. We're 12% of the population, and yet over 50% of the prison population. There's something wrong with that picture. And so there has to be discussions about criminal justice reform. How do you change the whole criminal justice system? Not just the police end, but even justice in the courts. How do we do that in terms of the court system? How do we stop Black folk from going to prison in a disproportionate way from white folk? There's a lot of white folk that commit more crimes than African Americans, but they can get off either because of white privilege or because of economic resources to get a good attorney, or what. There are systems, and then there's some punishments, some sentences that are far more geared towards Black folk than white folk. The whole issue of crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. I don't like cocaine. I don't deal with cocaine, period. But yet the bottom line is that if you're a Black person or someone that has crack versus the same one has much more in terms of powder, the black person gets a much higher sentence or longer sentence than those with white, with the
Yeah.
powder coat. So these are conversations that we must have in terms of leveling the playing field and bringing about true equality and true justice. And we can do that by starting the conversation today, sitting down, having honest dialogue, and talking about taking off the mask and creating a society that Dr. King talked about, the beloved community, where we can live together as brothers and sisters rather than to perish as fools.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. So we're starting that now. You set that up, and so I commit to you, Temple Shir Shalom. We want to be a part of that, and let's do that together. You and me, our congregations, our colleagues, and figure this out. I've been so inspired in these past few years. You always have too, for me personally, but having learned from Brian Stevenson and the Equal Justice Initiative that he's created. You talked about, incarceration rates, all those things too. I would love. Have you been to the new museum that opened up 2 years ago in Alabama? The lynching museum, and we should go together, right? And we should go with people from our congregations together.
Yes.
And learn together. It should be. I want to get there. It's so. I've been told it's so powerful. I've been reading about it. I think it's a really important thing for us to do. But
Well,
I think
when I went to the Yad Vashem, and I've been to Yad Vashem several times, but the very first time I went to Yad Vashem and saw those vivid images of Jewish brothers and sisters who were lynched, who were killed, I cried. I cried because while I had heard about the oppression and heard about the Holocaust and heard about the lynching, I had not seen it with my eyes. So when I was at the Yad Vashem and I saw it with my natural eye, it took me back to my own history of the Black lynchings. It took me back, and I wept because you could then see the connections between my Black brothers and sisters and my Jewish brothers and sisters. The Holocaust Memorial Center in Farmington Hills, up the street from me. I mean, I've been there several times. I've spoken there. It always affects me. And so I long for us to do that, to go together to the Lynching Museum, to go together to see these images where we can see that we have far more in common than we do that separate us and that divide us.
Yeah. And, my disappointment in our talking right now is because you're a great giver of hugs and embracing. And, I feel that right now. And that's the kind of embrace to build these bridges that gets us through these difficult times. And, you also always build hope. And even in times of difficulty and despair. And I want to echo that as well and hold on to that and figure out ways to get through this and continue this work together. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel taught that in a free society, only some may be guilty, but all are responsible. Yeah. And, in the difficulty and the looting that's happening and stuff, it's discouraging. We have to be responsible to help stop that and to figure out ways to get through this and to continue understanding more where the anger comes from and why that exists, but to make sure that we channel it in the best ways to help one another. Right. And so let's keep talking and working on this.
I want to make sure we do that. Let me just, I had a chance to speak at the Abraham Joshua Heschel School in New York in 2007, which was a high honor because I know that Dr. King and Rabbi Heschel were very, very close friends. And so that was an honor for me to speak at the Abraham Joshua Heschel School. And let me just add on those protests, those looting. As I stated, the anger is real, but let us not forget that there are infiltrators. And I know that Trump and Bill Barr said that they are all from the left, that they're left wing, and that they are a group called Antifa. But I also have information that the Michigan militia and other groups that from the far right wing, that they are also intentionally infiltrating these groups because they want to cause violence, they want to cause issues of looting to make it appear that it's coming from African Americans and other persons of color. And so we must take that to heart as well. So the one thing I'll say about hope, in the New Testament, Christian scriptures, there is a passage that simply says, may the God of hope fill you with all hope and joy as you trust in him. And so my words to all of us is that may the God of hope fill all of us with all joy and hope as we trust in him, believing that God Almighty is on our side and God will see us through. In the words of Dr. King's great movement anthem, we shall overcome someday.
Someday, my friend. Thank you very much for being a part of this. It means a lot to me that you gave me some of your Monday and on your day off to be a part of this. I really feel privileged to have you as a friend and a brother in this, and I really love you, and this means a lot. So thank you.
Yes. Love you, my friend. Take care and God bless. And to all of my friends in the Jewish community, I love you from your Black rabbi.
And thank you. And again, let's keep talking about how we can, channel our needs here. There's anger, and to make sure that we create justice. From Temple Shir Shalom, I want to thank Brian Fishman behind the scenes, helping Pastor and me do this morning. Hey, for anyone who's watching who's not a part of the Shir Shalom community, if you want to go to Israel with us tomorrow on our virtual tours of Israel with Rabbi Daniel, you can Facebook message me and I'll give you the link to that, so you can jump into that class and have fun with that with us too. When we're, again, socially distant, we're trying to figure out ways to bring us together as much as possible. We very much look for that time when we're going to be together and creating that hope hand in hand as well, and making this world better too. So thank you, my friends, and let's make this a much better week than last week, where we grow together and find that hope. Thanks, everyone.